Now, thank you, Dirk, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Matthias, and I'm a part of the Navarre Tourism Observatory. I'm going to go through some of our sources of information and their weaknesses regarding this issue of solid waste management, and then I will proceed to 2 good practices carried out in our region. To start off, in this area, we don't produce any data on our own at the observatory, and we solely depend on the data other entities provide us. And in Navarre, the waste management is carried out by the local authorities within the strategic framework of the Waste Master Plan of Navarre. For the time being, we do not have any exact data on the amount of waste generated by tourism. On destination level, the most specific data we have currently is the category of domestic and commercial waste. And in this regard, in 2020, there was set an objective as to recycle 50% of domestic and commercial waste. And this objective was met by 14 out of 16 local waste managing entities in Navarre, with some front runners recycling proportions of 67 and 68%. And in this case, it might be worth mentioning the fact that these front runners apply the door-to-door print services, similar to the example Isidora presented earlier. However, the worst case is our capital, the Pamplona, with only 38% of recycling of the domestic and commercial waste. And this means that 71% of the Navarrese population lives in zones that does not meet the objective yet. Since the weight of these very populated areas are so large, it means that 46%, that in overall 46% of the domestic and commercial waste was recycled in Navarre in 2020. And since we don't have any specific data on destination level, we have tried to estimate the waste generation corresponding to tourists with a very basic calculation. We calculated the average tourist population in 2020 and how much waste they would generate, assuming that they follow the same patterns as the local populations, which is a lot to assume, but we have to start somewhere. In 2020, the average daily populations of tourists were about 4,200 tourists a day. And as I said, assuming that they have the same pattern of waste generation, the equivalent daily consumption generation would be 4.9 tons of solid waste, and yearly almost 1,800 tons. And this would be just about 0.6% of the total waste generation of Navarre. However, the usefulness of this estimation or this data are limited, since they don't really take into account neither seasonality nor the behavior of the tourists. Continuing, since the local authorities manage solid waste on the day-to-day basis, they have some potential to be valuable sources of information for us. So far, we have not had too much luck, and we have not interchanged a lot of data. But however, as an example, the Waste Management Association of Pamplona, the capital of Navarre, have data on the amount of waste generated by the hospitality sector in the old town of Pamplona, since they recover glass and paper directly from the establishments. Therefore, they were able to conclude that the glass from the hospitality of the old town of Pamplona dropped by 63% in 2020. This was, of course, mainly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As a counterpart to the destination-wide data I have presented, I will now proceed to this more specific data on 2 examples of good practices. The 2 most internationally famous products of Navarre are probably the Way of St. James and the San Fermin Festival, described by Hemingway. And these two products have in common the fact that tourism the tourism they generate have a considerable impact on the waste generation in the destination. The Way of St. James continues to be one of the busiest pilgrimages in Spain, and every year thousands of pilgrims decide to take this route, enjoying the natural and cultural riches along this way. And many pilgrims begin their journey in the Pyrenees or either in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port on the French side or in Roncesvalles on the Spanish side. And then the route goes through mainly small villages, and there the tourism is of course a source of income, but it also makes up a considerable part of the waste generation in these small rural villages. Therefore, the regional governments along the Way of St. James and the non-profit organization Ecoembes have launched the Camino del Reciclaje project, which seeks to raise awareness on the preservation of the Way of St. James and the environment by promoting recycling of the waste generated while doing the pilgrimage. With the aim of reducing littering in natural spaces along the way, 17,000 reusable plastic bags made by recycled PET has been distributed among the participating hostels in Navarre, with the aim to help the pilgrims store the waste they generate during each stage, and then throw it out in the appropriate bins when they arrive at the next hostel. And meanwhile, the hostels and the restaurants along the way have also been facilitated with extra bins as to increase the degree of separated waste. And so far, the project has resulted in recycling of 9 tons of paper and 3.6 tons of metal and plastic packaging in the period of June to September through 2021. The second good practice is from San Fermin. The San Fermin festival is, as well as the Way of St. James, generates a considerable impact on the waste generation in the destination. During a short period of time, our capital, Pamplona, receives hundreds of thousands of visitors. And for example, in 2019, the old town of Pamplona received 183,000 visitors compared to a local population of only 11,000. This temporal increase of population, as well as the fact that the majority come to party, gives ground for a huge impact on the waste generation during this short amount of time, and especially in the single-use plastics. And therefore, it usually looks like this in the morning during San Fermin. To fight this problem, an initiative was started with the objective to limit the waste generated during the festival. The town hall of Pamplona provides cups for establishments to use during the festival, and then the bars charge €1 deposit for each cup, and then the users can, at any time, they can exchange these cups for a new and clean one anytime, or €1. They can get the deposit back. Then the used cups are then cleaned by a non-profit organization and made ready for use another day. Since 2016, the management of these cups has been adjusted slightly, but the main aspects of the project remain the same. And regarding the tangible results of this project, the participation of establishment has increased over the years, which has also resulted in growing from 100,000 cups in 2016 to 560,000 in 2019, which until now is the last year that San Fermin was celebrated due to the pandemic. The project has also resulted in saving CO2 emissions, and it has gone from 4.9 tons in 2017 to 21 tons of CO2 saved in 2019. And in conclusion, it results difficult for us to generate a comprehensive knowledge on this issue area, since we only have either very general data or very specific data from certain projects. And since the management of the waste is carried out by many different stakeholders, and there do exist some opportunities to exploit data from local authorities, but at the same time, we also have to consider which data and which estimations are actually useful for decision making. And carrying on a project level, however, we have been able to observe the positive impact of some of the good practices. And in the case of the reusable cups, we have seen how the initiative has been able to grow and increase the positive impact over the past years. And with this, I end our presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.